Hello, I'm Stephen McDonell in China, and this is Foreign Correspondent. They're simple people leading uncomplicated lives, cutting grain, raising pigs in a beautiful hidden world. But they're in the path of a juggernaut. China's economic boom is thundering in.
Every year, really, in the last 10 years, there's been a huge increase in the number of visitors. We're talking about millions.
So, in and around a place they really do call Shangri-La, they have to decide how to make it work for them.
The problem is that local people don't have the skills that these new businesses need.
And here to help is an Australian with a vision, which might explain the dunny with water views, as the modern world comes to a place beyond the lost horizon.
They just seem to be, very happy-go-lucky kind of students in general. It's really easy to motivate them and really easy to get things done.
As a reporter in China, one place that's always difficult to visit is Tibet. If you are allowed in, you're accompanied at every stage by a government official. But ethnic Tibetans occupy a much larger patch than this tightly controlled area. And that's where we're heading to tonight. As China's economic wave rolls ever closer, are the people from the real Shangri-La ready for the change that's coming? Southwestern China, they pay an economic price for living in the clouds. While the east of the country has been booming, most Tibetans are still waiting to get a slice of the financial miracle. There are problems of distance, altitude, ethnic tensions, and what some say is a life under Chinese occupation. But even here, change is coming.
There is tremendous diversity among Tibetan areas. Tibetans themselves from different regions speak different dialects, have different economic and cultural practices.
The massive area where Tibetans are is much wider than the official Tibetan Autonomous Region. Greater Tibet spills over into 4 other provinces, taking up roughly a quarter of China's landmass. Much of the region has a government ban on foreign reporters. But we drive up into the wild reaches of Tibetan Yunnan, which doesn't have the same restrictions as elsewhere. We're with Australian lecturer Ben Hillman, a Tibet specialist who's become part of the fabric here. So, would you describe this as an economically depressed area?
Well, there are pockets of prosperity, particularly along the main highways and along the river that we're passing now. But once you go back up into the mountains, you find people are doing it pretty tough.
Ben Hillman is running a unique experiment which sprang from his original academic research. It's a program designed to catapult Tibetans out of poverty. In search of recruits, he and his team head out to places set apart from the modern world.
It's about giving young people in these remote parts an opportunity, because the skills that have served them in the past are not going to serve them in the future.
We arrive in Baju and get a warm reception. Family and friends have turned out to see why we want to speak to 18-year-old Lhamo. At the moment, Lhamo's existence is that of a pretty standard mountain village farmer. But she'll soon leave all this behind if the visitors are successful. A life of weighing pigs for market will be replaced by computers, English and interaction with outsiders. The family is sure of certain things. These 2 pigs weigh 24 kilos and that they can be sold for around $30 each. But as for letting their daughter go off to live in town for an unknown benefit, well, that's another matter. Ben Hillman tells the family about his Eastern Tibet Training Institute, or ETI, that it offers free job-specific training for young Tibetans, and that after just 4 months studying, most students get jobs. But Lhamo's father is not totally convinced. Lhamo has hardly left this valley in her life, and she's painfully shy.
这个住在这里怎么样？你喜欢吗？
喜欢。
为什么？
因为这里的风景好。
是吗？
是。而且吃的也好。
你最喜欢吃的是什么？
最喜欢吃的是马铃薯。
Lhamo's 16-year-old cousin Joma walks for 2 hours with her father to meet the foreigner offering training. In a world of sophisticated, integrated global economies, she's only completed primary school. Her family's combined annual income is $760. She's almost certainly going to sign up for the school.
你的生活到现在都在这儿，你现在去很远的地方培训，你不是担心吗？
担心啊。
担心吗？
担心。
为什么担心？
因为我对那里的环境不熟悉啊。
The farmers who live around Baju pick mushrooms for the Japanese market to supplement their meagre incomes. But having barely any cash doesn't mean they go hungry. It's a fertile place, and living off the land, they seem to have plenty to eat. Yet Lhamo's dad wants something more for his daughter, so he's agreed to let her go and study. She may never live in this village again.
会想他吗？
说不出来，心疼。
The communal existence up here has been like this for an eternity. And on the night before they leave, the 2 young women get one last taste of familiarity amongst the people they know and love. From tomorrow, their lives will take another course. Morning comes and they head down the mountain to reach the nearest road. Lhamo and Joma carry their bedding and just a few personal belongings. They've been doing walks like this ever since they can remember. It's not uncommon to hike for half a day just to go to the shops. The girls arrive at what must be one of the coolest bus stops on the planet. There are no timetables. You just stay here until the next minivan comes along. Finally, a minibus stops. It's the last chance to turn back. Without hesitation, they get on board. The place that awaits them was once a backwater, but it's now going through something of its own boom. The Tibetan area in Yunnan Province is called Diqing, and this is its capital. The town of 150,000 used to be called Zhongdian, but in a blatant attempt to attract tourists, it's been given a name change. For Chinese people, this is a mysterious and romantic place, so it didn't seem even the slightest bit over the top when it was officially renamed Shangri-La. After all, the area is supposed to represent legendary utopian ideals, bound up in a remote and mystical mountain lifestyle. And tourists, hoping to taste just a little bit of this, are arriving here by the busload. With new roads, an airport and trains coming soon, Diqing is attracting people like never before.
Say the mid-90s, where there would have been visitors or numbers of arrival in the tens of thousands. Now in 2011, we're talking about millions.
Some of the buildings would go back at least 100 years.
Ben Hillman first came to this area in 1999. He fell in love with the place and ended up doing his PhD on development policy in Western China.
In this part of Tibet, this has been an important market town for hundreds of years.
He says it's probably tourism that saved the old part of town from demolition, with traditional houses being renovated to become cafes, bars and small hotels.
The hotels, the travel agencies that have mushroomed over the last few years require people with skills. But the problem is that local people don't have the skills that these new businesses need.
What is your phone number?
So this is where his school comes in. Employers had been bringing in Han Chinese workers from outside to fill the many job vacancies.
My phone number is 1.
Ben Hillman says he realised that young Tibetans could land these jobs instead if they could only get some specific training.
I am from...
So he set up his institute, which now gets funding from the US government and other international donors. Jorma and Lhamo have arrived for their first day in class and uttered their first words in English. It's not going to be an easy road. When computer class starts, many of the students are using one for the first time. Their fingers touch a keyboard as if it were an alien, but in these devices they can see a better future.
如果可以的话，想做个导游，那不行的话就在什么酒店里打工吧。
在酒店做什么样的工作？
就是服务员，还有什么前台那些了。
要去练这些。
17-year-old Chiling Peizu lives not too far from the town. If he wasn't studying right now, he'd be working with his family in the fields, where he was just days ago. This time of year is barley cutting season. It's not for sale, but is used for the villagers to survive the approaching winter.
一直到明年的3月4月，又开始种这样的东西。
Harvesting is a battle against time and the elements. After they cut it, they must hang the barley quickly to dry. If they cut too quickly, the barley won't be ready and the grain won't fall out. If they don't get it up to dry before the rain comes, it will rot and be useless. While one batch is being hung, another is being cut. Chiling Peizu has seen his parents' hard life, and this is his chance to escape.
培训以后，如果你找到新的工作跟那个工资，你想做什么？
做用来养家，然后足够的也自己花花。
There are now many more potential students than there are places at the institute. So they give priority to those from the most disadvantaged backgrounds. And it's not only the service industry they're being trained for. Of all the projects the school's been involved with, for many this would have to be the most impressive. On the outskirts of Shangri-La, overlooking Napa Lake, they're building a dunny with a view. Hey, ni mahal.
Okay, yeah, that's good, that's good.
We meet Mark Singleton, an electrician from the south coast of New South Wales. He's a volunteer teaching green energy and construction.
It's a composting toilet, so it's basically using aerobic function, where the composting material, the human manure as we call it, is composted down using aerobic bacteria.
Most of these kids couldn't see the point in finishing high school. He's hoping he can help them find work in the construction industry, currently dominated by Han Chinese workers.
Someone can just get you on work site for a few days. They can see that you know a little bit about how to use drills, how to use power tools, how to work in a work site. Then you'll just have that advantage over any other kind of applicant for that job.
Night falls, and at the girls' dormitory, study continues. Jorma and Lhamo help each other. Meanwhile, in the boys' dormitory downstairs, enough study for today, time for the male heroics. Here you can find the truly bizarre, but also the surprisingly peaceful.
Most of the young people that join our program tend to be very shy. They come from rural areas, and when they're in the city, they feel like they don't belong. And so we're able to see a tremendous transformation.
Diqing might be more relaxed than other Tibetan areas in terms of allowing in foreigners, but there are still pressures that loom under the surface. We can't ask the students what they think about certain subjects, like the Dalai Lama or the Chinese government's attitudes towards Tibet, because we don't want to land them in hot water just when they're getting a break in life. Likewise, we can't ask the school's staff about these subjects, because we think it just might result in the school being shut down. So in one way, the Chinese government wins, because we're not talking about subjects that it doesn't like. On the other hand, though, it loses, because these restrictions on freedom of speech prevent a more all-encompassing discussion of the region, one which would also include any positive things that the government is doing in Tibetan areas. And there is both good and bad news. Government transport spending brings the tourists that create jobs. But a lack of government-funded training is why ETI is helping Tibetans to get these jobs. Yongzong is one of their graduates. She grew up in the poorest of families, but is today working in the prestigious Songtsam Hotel.
因为客房部里面接触客人的比较多，还练一练我的胆子，所以可以。
In Yongzhong, you can see what the other students will become. She's employed, confident, and changing the fortunes of those around her. She's the breadwinner for her family and is putting her little brother through high school.
买了2笼子，下面还有一个。我弟弟是喜欢调皮，那个学习也很好。你这个是不得个。
When she was 8 and her brother 6, their father was felling timber for house repairs. He died when a tree came down on him.
到那个时候，从那开始，我母亲就不修这个老的房子，因为好像她有点伤心。
Back in her village, a day and a half's drive from Shangri-La town, Yongzong's house is one of the most run down. Her mum lives here by herself, tending chickens and pigs. But today Yongzong is coming home for the first time in 8 months. So she waits for a first glimpse of her daughter coming up the track. Throughout the village, word has spread that the girl who's made good will be back for a visit. Yongzong left here as a subsistence farmer and returns with money in her pocket. Money that means she can now afford to dream. She returns and it smiles all round. Inside, Yongzong's auntie prepares a meal while she has a chat with her mum. Despite everything she's done, she's on the receiving end of a stern Tibetan mother lecture about how she needs to work more diligently.
以前人最穷的是不怕钱，只要家里面有粮食吃，就不觉得苦。当然现在呢，没有钱的家就是觉得穷，所以我觉得我家有点穷。
那虽然你的家里人有点穷，
对，
你是找到工作，你可以帮助他们。
对，
你觉得你的妈妈为你很自豪吗？
应该是吧，我也不知道。
那边比这边暖和一点，是吧？
Down in Shangri-La, even in the first few weeks of study, Jorma and Lhamo have started to come out of their shells.
但是你可以，比如以前我们第一次认识你，可能你觉得我觉得不好意思跟外国人说话。现在看你是不一样，对不对？
对。
学校。
And they're not taking this opportunity lightly.
因为我只有这一次机会，没有其他的机会了。
Ben Hillman hopes the role of the school will one day be taken over by government. But in the meantime, he says it'll remain necessary if locals are going to succeed in this time of huge transition.
Tibetans throughout the plateau will continue to live in many ways the same way that they've lived for hundreds of years. But at the same time, it's not going to be possible for all Tibetans to prosper, to thrive while pursuing those same practices. So many young people will need to look for alternative sources of income, and they'll need help.
Zong walks up the mountain behind her house, up and up towards the forest where her father died. As a Buddhist, this is where she comes to pray. Here, many people ask for something more, for wealth, success, and even overall happiness. But she knows how her life could have turned out, and she's thankful that now things are starting to look up.